Welcome back to the vault. Today's video is an audio recording of an interview between Austin Moore, the Orange County Sheriff's Officer General Counsel, and Sergeant Justin Wall from the Professional Standards Division. Austin Moore was instrumental in getting Jeremy Dewitte's charges dropped. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I've included part 1 and part 2. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.
I'm Sergeant Justin Wall of the Orange County Sheriff's Office Professional Standards Section. Today's date is Friday, April 30th, 2021, and the current time is 10:20 a.m. This interview is being conducted at the Office of Professional Standards located at 2500 West Colonial Drive. I'm interviewing, can you just state your name for me?
Austin Moore, General Counsel.
Okay. General Counsel Moore, are you aware that I'm recording this interview?
Yes.
Has anyone threatened, coerced, or offered you any preferential treatment to give this statement?
No.
Are you under the influence of drugs or alcohol that may impair your testimony?
No.
Can you raise your right hand so I can place you under oath? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are to provide will be true and correct?
I do.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Moore, I'm conducting an investigation into the conduct of a couple of our employees, Sergeant Vidler and Corporal Ramsey, and I understand that you may have some knowledge about some things that are pertinent to my investigation. And one of the things that was sent to me was an email that appears to have been sent from you to Sergeant Vidler on May 20th, 2019. And just for the record, I'm showing you a copy of this email. Did you author this email?
I'm just reading it real quick.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you send that email to Sergeant Vidler?
I did.
Did you send that? Do you recall sending that email to anyone other than Sergeant Vidler?
I don't recall sending that to anyone. And I would know if I had sent it to anyone else. So.
Okay. Do you recall what prompted you to send this email?
I just know that starting in the spring of 2019, I was working with Sergeant Vidler in relation to some concerns they had about Metro State Police and some of the activities that they were engaging in during funeral escorts. And there were several different areas of concern for Sergeant Vidler and some of the other motors guys. And so I did research on several different suspected criminal activities that that Metro State was maybe engaged in, and one of those had to do with the types of weapons that the Metro State employees were carrying. And so it came to my attention that the types of weapons varied among the employees. One of the employees, Jeremy Dewitte, carried a Pepperball gun, which I didn't know what that was. I did some research, reviewed the statutes related to open carry of weapon, open carry of firearms, definition of a firearm, and I was of the opinion that those open carry statutes didn't apply to the Pepperball gun. Just to confirm my interpretation of the relevant statutes, I contacted the manager of misdemeanors over at the state attorney's office and gave her the scenario and asked for her opinion, and she concurred and informed me that she did not believe that there was anything illegal about anyone open carrying a Pepperball gun, as we kind of understood the facts. So I just transmitted that message to Sergeant Vidler via this email.
Okay. And who was it that you spoke to? You mentioned the supervisor of misdemeanors.
It was Lisa Gong Guerrero.
Okay. Is she still there, do you know?
Yes, she is. I don't know if she's still in misdemeanor supervisors, but she had been in that position for several years.
Okay. Do you remember, did you send like a read receipt or anything like that associated with this? If you don't remember specifically about this one, do you typically...
I didn't. I wouldn't have sent a read receipt. But an email like this, it wouldn't be uncommon to follow up with a phone call.
Okay. Do you recall if you made a phone call on this one?
The only thing I know for sure is that Sergeant Vidler and I had many conversations about the activities of Metro State, again, in that early, late spring, summer part of 2019. And it would be surprising if I didn't discuss this, but I cannot say for sure.
Okay. Do you remember if Sergeant Vidler was looking for like permission to make an arrest when it came to the Pepperball gun? Is that if that's how it came up?
Yeah. So again, the discussion was about a bunch of different activities that Metro State was engaged in, and whether or not any of those activities provided an avenue for a criminal investigation and prosecution. And so the question was, Jeremy Dewitte carries this thing called a Pepperball gun. It looks like a gun. He open carries it. Is there an arrestable offense available under those circumstances? And I did the research, and the answer was no.
Okay. And you've mentioned open carrying a couple of times. Did Sergeant Vidler mention anything about whether it was carried in a holster on a gun belt?
Yes. So there were pictures provided, and there's video provided, and it's widely available on the internet, even dating back to this time and predating even May 20, 2019. And so, yeah, I saw and spoke with Vidler about the exact circumstances of the open carry. And so it's an open carry of a thing that looks like a gun, and it's in a holster on Mr. DeWitte's hip.
Okay, so it's your opinion that when the gun, whether it's a Pepperball gun or firearm, is in a holster on a gun belt, as Mr. DeWitte often carried it and is widely available on the internet, pictures and video of him doing that, that is, in your opinion, open carry, not a concealed.
That's right, and that is my legal opinion based on my that's my legal opinion also, not just my personal opinion.
Okay. So with that in mind, was the intent of this email to inform Sergeant Vidler to not make an arrest of Mr. DeWitte if he was open carrying a Pepperball gun?
That's right. Not only not to make an arrest, there is no criminal charge associated with the open carry of a Pepperball gun. So no detention, no probable cause, no arrest.
Okay. And again, that isn't your legal opinion.
That's right.
Okay. What other involvement have you had in the ongoing investigation being conducted by Sergeant Vidler and Corporal Ramsey involving Mr. DeWitte?
So again, there was a period of time where I was heavily involved with several cases that Sergeant Vidler was pursuing against Metro State and some of their employees, including Mr. DeWitte. Some of those may still be pending investigations, and so prefer not to talk about the details of those, but I was involved in reviewing and revising search warrants that related to those investigations. And then most recently, I became aware of an arrest that happened. I don't know, it's probably now a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago, an arrest by Sergeant Vidler of Jeremy Dewitte.
Okay. How did you become aware of that arrest?
Either the undersheriff or most likely the undersheriff called me or sent me a text.
Okay. And so what actions did you take when you learned of that?
I don't believe I took any action as a result of the call from the undersheriff, but then I was approached by Captain Carlos Espinoza to discuss the details of the arrest and review the body-worn camera or a body-worn camera video from the arrest. And that was on the date of the arrest, within hours of it happening.
Okay. So the arrest, it was later that day, after the arrest?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your impression of what you saw? Or what were your next steps?
So I reviewed the video, and I had to get familiar with the statute again, because it can be confusing to parse through some of the language as it relates to what's a firearm, what's a weapon, open carry, concealed carry. But reviewing the video, I was pretty comfortable that that in the light most favorable to Sergeant Vidler, he had reasonable suspicion to stop Mr. Dewitte. But that reasonable suspicion quickly evaporated once he learned that it was a Pepperball gun. And if you watch the video, it's, I think it seems apparent that Mr. Vidler, or Sergeant Vidler, knows that it's Mr. Dewitte that he's arresting, and that he knows Mr. Dewitte carries a Pepperball gun. So again, the reasonable suspicion and the reason for the stop evaporates pretty quickly after the initial stop. And then I started to have concerns about the continued detention and then ultimately the arrest.
Okay. And as far as the continued detention and arrest, do you believe that Sergeant Vidler's actions were in direct violation of the email that you had sent Sergeant Vidler in 2019?
Yeah, once he learned that it was a Pepperball gun, which again, he checks the gun. I think he takes out the magazine. I'm not a big gun person. I think he takes out the magazine, or attempts to, and confirms that it's a Pepperball gun. At that point, based on my legal guidance that I provided him back on May 20, 2019, the stop should have ended. Okay.
And so once you made that decision, what were the next steps that you took?
At that once it became clear that there were some serious issues with the detention and the arrest, we started considering what the appropriate actions were by the agency. And
when you say we, who do you mean?
It was myself, Captain Espinoza at the very beginning, and there must have been somebody else there. I just don't recall exactly who it was. But once we had this initial discussion, then my office, the legal services department, started researching and making sure that in fact there was no probable cause to justify the detention or the arrest of Mr. Dewitte for any criminal violation. And once we were satisfied that there was no probable cause for any criminal violation, then the decision was made to proceed with an unarrest of Mr. Dewitte and to have him released from the Orange County Jail.
Okay. When did you review to come to that conclusion? Statute, I would assume.
Yep.
Beyond statute, what did?
As much of the body-worn camera as we could watch. So I think we had, I can't remember the name of the other, I want to say lieutenant, but maybe it was just another deputy that was on scene.
It was Deputy Reeves, Jonathan
Reeves, yes, that was the main body-worn camera
Okay.
video that we reviewed. And then I really was adamant that I needed to see Sergeant Vidler's report, because these types of arrests really depend on, for my evaluation, it comes from the perspective of the deputy and what he perceived and what he thought he had encountered. And so there are things that that could have been in Sergeant Vidler's report that would have made a huge difference about whether or not he had probable cause for any criminal violation. And after reviewing the full report, it was clear that based on what Sergeant Vidler had perceived, he didn't have probable cause to detain or arrest Dewitte for anything on that day.
Okay. Did you review jury instructions for this charge? Do you remember?
We may, either myself or one of the other attorneys in my office may have definitely looked at the jury instructions.
Okay. Did you look for any case law?
The only case law I think we looked at had to do with whether or not the holster would, a gun or a Pepperball gun or simulated firearm in a holster would count as being concealed. And it was pretty clear that a gun in a holster is openly carried, especially in the manner in which Mr. Dewitte had the Pepperball gun in his holster.
Okay. I want to go back to I know you said that some of it is an ongoing investigation. You don't want to go into it. I understand that I have, I guess, an email that mentions your name, that you had reviewed a search warrant and it was denied. Do you recall anything about that?
I know over the course of several days, and I remember being on the phone with Sergeant Vidler later in the evening on one of those days and going over a couple of search warrants. And I don't remember the details at this point, but I remember that I was not satisfied that he had probable cause to support the search warrants. And I remember telling him that, and I remember us sending drafts of the search warrant back and forth and trying to help revise and develop, ask him questions if he had any more information so that we could try to develop probable cause so that the search warrant would be appropriate. And there were some of them that we never I was never comfortable that the search warrants were supported by probable cause. And I do recall having a conversation with someone, and I don't know if it's Sergeant Vidler, but somebody informed me that one of the search warrants that I had rejected, he went ahead and submitted to the court for review, and that the court did sign off on the search warrant.
Okay. And do you recall, was that back in 2019?
Yes, that's the thing that was happening spring, early summer of 2019.
Okay.
Although that 2019, those issues from 2019 did drag out for some time, for months.
Okay.
Because I remember at some point there was a directive where he was told that he, being Sergeant Vidler, needed to wrap up those investigations. No more charges, no more search warrants, like finish what you have and be done with it. And the reason why that directive had come down was because the the case had been dragging on for some period of time.
Okay. Did you give that directive?
No, that was Major Inzueto.
When was that?
I feel like that was almost in the fall of 2019.
And that directive, just to be clear, was to basically conclude the investigation?
Yep. No more search warrants, no more charges. Finish what you have.
Okay. All right. And I know I'm kind of jumping around. I didn't mean to.
Right.
Sorry about that. But I wanted to go back to the actual arrest and then subsequent unarrest. I don't think I finished that. So once that decision was made that there was no probable cause and the decision was made in your office to make an unarrest, is that correct?
So the recommendation from my office to the undersheriff was to pursue the unarrest.
Okay. So did you pass that on to the undersheriff?
I would have had that conversation with the undersheriff, and I don't know if he ran that by anyone else, but I know that he at some point said, yes, go ahead and file the unarrest paperwork.
Is that something that you are responsible for, or somebody else?
It's not something that happens very often, so one of the other attorneys in my office and myself were both reaching out to the jail separately, trying to talk to different people to figure out the procedure for completing the unarrest. And there's actually there's an admin order from the chief judge that explains how to complete that. This is a different unarrest because he's already booked in the jail, but yet it's before first appearances, so it's on the law enforcement agency to actually complete the unarrest. So anyway, we found someone out at the jail who explained that we could fax the paperwork out once we got it completed, and so we drafted the affidavit, and then
When you say
it's myself and David Porter, who's
Okay.
another attorney in my office.
Okay.
And we drafted an affidavit, and then the affidavit has to be filed by a deputy. We wanted to have either Sergeant Vidler or someone in his chain file the affidavit with the jail, but unfortunately there was a funeral going on that day, I believe for Officer Kevin Valencia, and so all the motors units were occupied and were unavailable to serve the unarrest paperwork or deliver it to the jail or even sign off on the affidavit. So we had to find another deputy to sign the affidavit.
Okay. All right. And I have a copy of that affidavit, I believe. Okay. Is there anything else that you know about this investigation that's pertinent to this investigation you'd like to add at this time?
No.
All right. The current time is 10:44 a.m. and that concludes this interview. This is Sergeant Justin Wall with the Professional Standards Section. Today's date is April 30th, 2021, and the current time is 10:46 a.m. And I'm still here with General Counsel Austin Moore, and the interview concluded, but there was a couple other things that I wanted to address. So I'm still here with General Counsel Austin Moore. And Mr. Moore, did you have an opportunity to review the subsequent interview by Corporal Ramsey of Mr. Dewitte, who was after his arrest?
Yeah, after the day that we drafted the affidavit for the unarrest of Mr. Dewitte, I had an opportunity to watch body-worn camera of an interview done by Corporal Ramsey, of Mr. Dewitte. So I guess after they arrested him, they took him to whatever their substation is. And it's a pretty lengthy interview. I think it might be an hour long. And I watched the whole thing, and I watched parts of it multiple times. And the interview by Corporal Ramsey is troubling from a legal perspective because the discussion seems to be an attempt by the corporal to prove or elicit some sort of confession to criminal activity, and the criminal activity in this case is carrying the Pepperball gun, and under no circumstances could he have been charged with open carrying of the Pepperball gun, as it's not illegal. And Corporal Ramsey spends an inordinate amount of time trying to develop this charge, and it's again really troubling from a legal perspective because there's absolutely no legal basis whatsoever for the potential charge. And so why would you question someone for 55 minutes about a charge that doesn't exist? It just was very troubling. And in fact, Mr. Dewitte seemed to understand the law better than the corporal.
Okay.
There's also, I don't know, the video goes on, and at some point Sergeant Vidler does enter the room, and he asks Mr. Dewitte some questions. Again, from a legal perspective, as it relates to the charge of either concealed carrying the Pepperball gun, which it clearly wasn't concealed, or open carrying the Pepperball gun, which isn't a criminal charge. Mr. Vidler's questioning Sergeant Vidler's questioning is concerning, but the other issue has to relates to the subject matter of Sergeant Vidler's questions, and he's asking him about these personal matters, and he's talking about his personal business endeavors and how somebody on social media spread some inaccurate information. It seems like Sergeant Vidler thinks that Dewitte is responsible for starting rumors, and it just is, to me, it seemed completely inappropriate as a line of questioning where Sergeant Vidler's responsibilities are to enforce the law. And so why would you arrest someone, especially if you don't have probable cause for that arrest, and then question them about personal matters? It was troubling for me.
Are you saying the impression you got was that those rumors potentially started by Mr. Dewitte were directed towards Sergeant Vidler?
Yeah, so they were rumors about, it appears that Sergeant Vidler and Mr. Dewitte have a long history, and I know it goes back to at least May 20th, 2019, if not before that, and it is personal. And so the questioning between Sergeant Vidler and the answers between Dewitte at that interview are about Vidler suggesting that Dewitte is spreading rumors and Vidler trying to clear the air about the rumors. Again, completely personal issues, not criminal in nature in any way whatsoever.
Okay. Did you hear at any point Mr. Dewitte make references to asking for an attorney during that interview? Do you recall that?
I do. And so our advice in my office is, when in doubt, if there's any concern that someone has requested an attorney, then you should stop the interview and provide counsel. If I don't remember specifically, I wasn't concerned about the first invocation for the attorney, but there's a second invocation later, and I think even a request to use a phone. I think legally that second invocation would have been problematic from a criminal standpoint if there had been a criminal prosecution, which there won't be because there was no arrestable offense. However, one thing we like to say in our office is that we try not to make it a habit of violating the Constitution, and obviously the right to an attorney under circumstances is a constitutional right, and so we suggest that we err on the side of not violating the Constitution. So, yeah, that was concerning.
Okay. Was there anything else related to this that you'd like to add?
No, and I think that covers all of the body worn camera that I reviewed. I at some point later I saw a video from Mr. Dewitt's point of view. I think it was like a minute long, but it just confirmed the interaction. There was nothing new or special about that.
Are you referring to a body-worn camera worn by Mr. Dewitte?
I guess it was. I guess it's a body-worn camera.
A camera similar to a body-worn camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At some point, that gets turned off. I'm not sure how that happened, but the citizens have a right to film law enforcement. That's a First Amendment right. If it's impeding or interfering with the investigation, then the officer or deputy doesn't have to allow that filming to continue. But if it's not, that is a right that citizens have. So I couldn't exactly determine how the camera got shut off, but if and it's not clear that if it was shut off by Sergeant Vidler, if he did it because he thought the camera or the filming was impeding the investigation. So, but yeah, that's the only other video that I saw.
Okay. All right. That concludes this interview. The current time is 10:54 a.m.